Good afternoon. My name is Camila Nogués, and I welcome you today to Things That Matter. Cabrera.
Hello, Camila. Nice to hear everyone, and thank you very much for the invitation.
Well, today we're going to talk about a topic that for many might be sensitive and that we have been wanting to talk about for some time now. This topic is terrorism and how this affects all of us.
I totally agree. Nowadays, terrorism is an issue that concerns us all, not only because of the damage it causes in our society, but also because of what it has represented for several years.
Yes, in fact, often people think of terrorism as a way of having control or subdue people, and most people associate this with attacks on planes or planned explosions at strategic locations. But what do we mean by terrorism?
That's a very good question, Cami. And there are many people who, like you, are not sure of knowing what terrorism means. Terrorism is, by definition, the systematic use of terror that seeks to intimidate adversaries or the general population. This has always been used as one of the most common methods of oppression, not only of the government, but also of individuals or protests.
Okay, so if we wanted to separate the word terrorism, we would have something like terror and ism. To better understand the context of the word and its meaning, do you think we can define each one?
Sure, without any problem. Look, the word terror means violent actions or threats designed to cause fear to achieve generally political objectives. Now, the suffix ism means a distinctive practice or system, typically a political ideology.
Okay, that makes so much sense. So when we put these two words together, what we get is a violent practice or system designed to cause fear.
Yes, I couldn't have explained it better.
I think that knowing the definition of terrorism is something that helps us a lot to understand why we should not use this like an offense and much less to discriminate.
You're absolutely right, Camille. Many times people use the word terrorist to offend or discriminate against people. The Muslim community is frequently the most affected by this erroneous stereotype.
But why? I mean, Muslims have nothing to do with terrorism. They have already seen the definition of terrorism, and the definition of Muslim is only a follower of the religion of Islam, which clearly has nothing to do with it.
It is true, and indeed, according to the U.S. National Counterterrorism Center, between 82 and I think 97% of the victims of terrorism in the world are Muslims. Many of them in countries that are in conflict, where a long list of attacks claim the lives of thousands of civilians.
True, but even so, the stigma attached to the religion of Islam with those who use violence has been on the rise in recent years.
The good news is that I have heard a lot about Muslim men and women movements raising their voice on behalf of all saying not in my name, trying to make people aware of how being Muslim is not related in any way to terrorism.
That's true. Just a few days ago, I read about movements like Muslims Against Terrorism and Ramadan campaign in Kuwait, Morsi Days, Women for Peace and Against Islamic Radicalization, and even Humza Arshad, the Muslim YouTuber against terrorism.
It is true. I have also seen on the news many protests by Muslims raising their voices against the oppression and discrimination they suffer by making posters and shouting, "Since when does terrorism have a religion?"
It is true. It's a relief that these things happen, and hopefully people begin to understand that terrorism has nothing to do with them.
I totally agree with you, Camille. Changing the subject, I would like us to talk a little more about the historical connotation that this word has.
How good that you mention it, because I remember reading a David Anderson's book called El terror en los años de la guillotina, and there he said the word terrorist does not appear if not until the 18th century, at the time of the French Revolution, when Robespierre instilled terror as means of animating a revolution. This era was known as the Region of Terror. It is then when the word terrorism appeared for the first time. Terrorism meaning under terror. And it's applied to what will be later called state terrorism.
Yes, but the word terrorism is a very difficult word to define as it does not have a definition that everyone agrees on. It's frequently used by governments in general to describe an incident of terror, something peculiar, however, not original. The groups to which the term terrorist is applied are very varied, but in general there is unanimity in doing so.
Yes, this word involves a lot of context and history that should not be forgotten when using it, to avoid doing it wrongly.
I agree. So to close the podcast, I would like to say that in conclusion, the word terrorism is a word with a very strong meaning and a very important historical and cultural level.
Indeed, and that's why it should in no way be taken lightly or in the form of an offense.
That's a fact.
I agree. Thank you very much for coming today to talk about this important topic, Ale. You're definitely invited to come again whenever you want.
Thank you very much. I will definitely be back. Have a good day.
Well, thank you all listeners. This was Things That Matter with Camila Nogués and Alejandra Cabrera. If you liked our content, you don't forget to subscribe and comment, and see you next time.